instead of mic level. All right, let me see if that sounds better. If not, I can go ahead and switch it back. If you are on the chat, let me know. All right, take that kick off there. So yeah, let me know if there is, how it sounds. I've got a couple of options here. I know last time there were some issues with it, so let me know in the chat how it sounds right now, if there's any distortion on it, and if there is, I can fix it really quick. Did it start good and get worse? Let's see here. Sorry, there's a little lag on the chat. So let me know. Is that sounding better like that? All right, we're gonna go for it and see how everything works out. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Gonna just use this opportunity to just mess around a little bit in the studio, chat a little bit about interesting stuff that's been going on lately, some different things with my live setup, how I've been doing things, a couple gigs that I have coming up. I know I've been getting a bunch of questions about how I'm doing things right now, and I had a great time on the Analog Kitchen chat last night. The guys were awesome. Ooh. Okay, better before. Okay, so let's try this now. Are we back to something that sounds good? Give me a thumbs up if it sounds good, a thumbs down if it sounds bad. Let's see. Cool. Okay. Now I'm sure we got the. I'm sure we've got it set up now. Cool. Cool. All right. That's better. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you, Erica. Appreciate it. Yeah. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to dump them in the chat. If there's anything you'd like to talk about, anything you'd like to see, any questions that you have about what I'm doing. In the meantime, I am just gonna start to mess around with stuff a little bit here, and then we'll keep on going on from there. But I think that over the course of this, we're gonna chat a little bit about using the computer as a hybrid mixer instead of just using the hardware. Then talk a little bit about how I'm setting things up here and what's going on with this. I think there's a couple new gear things that came out lately, so if you guys want to talk about those, we can do that as well. But in the meantime, I think we're just gonna jam a little bit first, and then yeah, then we'll go from there. So let me switch this camera over here. Auto director. There we go. Yep, and here we go. All right. Well, sorry, I kind of got lost in that for a second. I was just going to jam for a couple of minutes, but sometimes you get some cool sounds and it just makes you want to keep going like that. So, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in for this. Let me know. Let's see in the chat here. Any questions, comments about stuff? Hey, Vincent, glad to see you here. Cool, cool. Awesome. Glad you guys liked it. Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm doing setup wise, and if you guys have any questions about it, happy to answer any of those questions. So basically all the drums are coming out of the analog rhythm, so you probably saw quite a bit of that. You know, drums are coming from out of here. Then, actually let me mess with my view here. There we go. That should be a little better, so you can see a little bit of both. So yeah, all the drums are coming out of the analog rhythm. So you saw that. The Oxy One is sequencing everything. So it's sequencing all of what's going on here in the modular. So different sequencers are sequencing different things. So, sorry, this first multi-track sequencer is sequencing the first 3 voices, all mono voices that I have in there. Then I've got another sequencer that's sequencing the Oxy choral via MIDI, because that has 8 voices, so I can sequence 8 voices all in one sequencer. Then I've got another sequencer that is sequencing the assimilator, which is a sample player. It's kind of like, I know it's kind of like a modular version of Digitact Plus. So yeah, so it's kind of a modern version of that. It's got 8 tracks, kind of like that does. It can do quite a bit more stuff. It's a pretty powerful sequencer. But yeah, so that's sequencing some of the voices in there. And then I have the 1010 bitbox, which is actually not being sequenced at all. I'm only using this in kind of the clip launching mode. So it's kind of like, it's almost like if you had looped clips in Ableton, so you can just, let me see if I can do an overhead view here. So yeah, so there's 16 pads basically, and each one of those I have set up so that it has a looped sample in it. So that vocal that you heard was in there was a single vocal sample, and see when you hit it, it just starts to play. So let's see here. So if I bring that up. Oh. Let's see here. Turn that one down. Maybe it won't play. Oh, that's why. Okay, so yeah, turn the level up in here. We've got pitch control over this, which is pretty cool. So I was able to pitch that up because it was out of tune. But you can hear that this is just a vocal sample, and that will just keep looping. And then when you hit it again, it stops. So it's kind of like having clip launching in Ableton, but it's a much more simplified version of it, and it's in here, and it's clocked to everything that's here. You can actually sequence each one of these pads. That's what all these inputs are for, but I'm actually just using this, you know, old school manual style. So that's what that's for. So, and then another thing that was kind of a big part of that performance is the Endorphins Ghost, which is this module right here on the end. And that is, I have that as a send on pretty much all of the voices so they can be sent to it. And it has high pass, low pass filter. It has delay, reverb, distortion, overdrive, a whole bunch of stuff all in one, and you can kind of set it up and manipulate it. So here, just to give you a quick example of what that's like. So coming from the BIA here, we've got, I'll just make this really simple. So I can just make that a real simple tone. Now, if I send that through the Ghost, I'll give you an idea what it sounds like. So this is just going through the Ghost right now. So you can see it kind of fills out the spectrum. And what's cool about this is that you can then mess with the filter. And kind of pick out certain parts of it that you want to mess with, which is a lot of fun. And you can set up the delays and the reverbs to act differently, which is also very cool. So that way you can have it be all different sorts of sounds that it goes through. And again, if I take that out from the Ghost, it'll take it a second to go away. That's the sound, the basic sound. And then back through the Ghost. So you can hear it's a pretty powerful unit that I put a lot of things through just to help kind of fill things out. So it gives it a much more of a kind of a complete sound. And it also is really interesting when you've got, random things like a bass line or something going through it. You'll pick up certain harmonics out of the bass, which is pretty cool. So like, so if you've got something like that, and you send that through the Ghost, you'll get something like So it's a really powerful way to add a whole bunch of extra kind of fullness and sound to everything, which is, it's something that I really enjoy a ton. Let's see, anyone with comments in here? Blending sounded good. Thanks, Vincent. Why no Octatrack? Good question. So, something that I'm doing differently now that haven't decided if this is going to be actually a permanent addition, but I'm definitely experimenting with it because I like to try different setups and see, what things I like from each of those setups. So I added in this module right here, which is the Expert Sleepers ES9. And what that is an audio interface. It's a 16 in, 16 out audio interface. So everything from the whole Modular is patched into different channels into the ES9, and then this one USB cable is going out to my computer, and in the computer I have Ableton set up as a mixer, and I'm not doing any sequencing from Ableton. It's not, there's no voices coming from Ableton, there's no, samples or loops or any of that stuff, but what it is it's just a mixer. So I have each one of these on a different channel of the mixer so that I can have different processing for it if I want. I have the analog rhythm going in via overbridge as well. So I have these different tracks broken out. I've got my kick and rumble tracks that are kind of grouped together so I can process them together. And then as a controller for all that, I have the Novation launch control here. And so basically every one of these faders is mapped to the channel in Ableton that's the fader for all of the stuff that's here. And it's kind of cool because what it does is it acts not only as my mixer and all of my effects, effects chain, effects processing, but it is also my end of chain. So I also was able to take out the analog heat, which I was normally using as kind of my end of chain person, or end of chain piece of equipment. And so now I have a master track in Ableton, so I can add that same kind of, compression and limiting and saturation and multi-band compression and EQ, all of that kind of on that master track. And then everything goes back out via this same USB cable into the ES9, and then the ES9 has two outputs, which are right here, 2 1/4-inch outputs, and that goes out to the main, which is my mixer, which is connected to the live streaming gear. So that's what you're listening to all of this on. So yeah, so that was all. It's kind of a way to play hybrid without hybrid, because I'm not really using Ableton for anything other than mixing. So it's not really a hybrid setup. I personally wouldn't really call it a hybrid setup, because I'm not using, all of the voices and all of the sequencing and all of the playing of everything is all coming from here. It's all coming from the live rig and the hardware stuff, and it's just running through Ableton as a mixer. So save some gear for travel, which is one of the things I was looking for. To make it a little bit easier. And I was inspired a little bit by a couple of friends of mine, Alex Anderson and Travarsi, and they were starting to use this kind of hybrid mixing setup, and I was like, I'm gonna give that a try. So it's an experiment right now. I haven't gotten rid of the Octatrack. I still love the Octatrack and EasyBot's performance template, but just wanted to try something different. And so it makes it, gives me a little bit more control, a little bit more power as far as processing power, which is a pretty cool thing. It's something that I enjoy, being able to have that control, and I have the willpower to not overdo it with what's going on in Ableton and turn this into an Ableton DJ set, because that's not at all what I'm interested in doing. Hey, EasyBot. Were your ears ringing? I just mentioned you in your performance template, because someone was asking why no Octatrack, and I still have it. I still love it. It's right there on the shelf. But I'm trying this and experimenting around with it. It's a lot of fun, and it's always good to try new stuff and see if there's things that you like more or less, and figure out what kind of goes in and comes out of your setup. So yeah, that's why no Octatrack, just to answer that question. But it's not gone forever, and I definitely prefer that setup as far as the simplicity and the ability to kind of not have to count on a computer, not have to do anything on a computer. Sometimes this Launch Control XL can be a little finicky. Sometimes it loses its connection, and so you might have noticed there was once during the performance that I had to unplug it and plug it back in so that it grabs that connection again, and that's a little frustrating. So it's not perfect, but it was definitely something that I wanted to try to see what I could do. It definitely improves the sound, that overall sound, making things sound a bit more finished, if you will. Like it's hard, being able to have the amount of processing that I have. I would need dozens of pedals and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's I don't know. It's interesting. I like it. So what else? Any other questions here in the chat? Let's see. Cool performance. Thanks. Glad you liked it. Yeah, it's. I was talking a bit yesterday when I was on the chat after Lucian's video on the Analog Kitchen site, and we were talking about improvisation, and that's one of the things, actually Matt EasyBot, who's on here, he and I have talked quite a bit about improvisation and versus preparation. And it's kind of a thing, like, to each his own, like whatever you're into. I mean, there's a lot of people who are really into writing music And so they want to write a song, they want to write tracks, they want to release those tracks, and then when they go out and play live, they want to play those songs and those tracks that they've created, which I totally get that. I have a bit of that myself, but it's not the way I've kind of opted to play live. The way I've opted to play live is setting this whole rig up so that it has sounds that I like, kind of it's almost like a color palette when you're painting. You know, I have kind of like my palette of stuff on here, my palette of different sounds, and then I kind of go in and kind of paint the picture using the palette of sounds while I'm performing. So that's the way I've opted to do it personally. So really everything is set up here for that. So I have things set up in banks of sounds rather than tracks and individual tracks. Yeah, so like one of the reasons why I use the Oxy so much and why it's like my favorite new piece of gear is because it allows me to do a lot of kind of like controlled chaos. It gives me the opportunity to randomize a lot of things while at the same time keeping things in key, making sure that I'm not kind of making it sound like total crap when I play, but also allows me to be able to improvise. So just to give you a little example of that, let's see here. See, there's a perfect example. I have to reset my launch control, and now it works again. So just start off with a kick just to have something kind of interesting. But if I go to, let's say the Erica Synths bass line. So I have this set on the second track here on the Oxy. So if I bring it up right now, there's nothing, because there's obviously nothing there. I can, I have this set to be an 8-step sequence, so that it would kind of loop. I like those kind of like short repeating sequences for bass. So I can just add in. Too much effects on there. So it's easy enough, just like a normal sequencer, just like on the Analog Rhythm or on a 909 or on a TR-8S or whatever, to be able to just sequence this way. And as with those ones, you can go in and basically hold down a note, and then you can adjust and kind of spin the knob and choose another note. So one thing you might have noticed as I was kind of spinning the knob there, every single note that it lands on is in Phrygian E, which is the key that I have it set to. And it's one of the things that I love is that I can go in and in a performance, I don't have to think like, okay, what notes are in this scale, and make sure that I'm hitting the right note, and listen to it on headphones to make sure that it's not, not going to sound like crap when I bring it in and all that stuff. But this way I can just randomly change the notes. So if I go in to change any of these notes, and then if I like that, or like the way that sounds, then I can just start adding a kick and a hat. And if I want to change up that sequence, I can just go in there. way to be able to kind of improvise on the fly using the Oxy One, so that you can get it to stay in key, but also kind of spin the knob and play, kind of random notes, but you can pick which ones you like. But while you're using, oops, kicked my camera there. While you're staying within that key. Now, another thing you can do is you can take all those steps out of there, and you can go into Euclidean mode, which is super, super easy to use on this. So what I can do is, just to start off with here, I had a little note holding on there. So with Euclidean mode, if you're familiar with Euclidean sequencing, it's kind of sequencing using Euclidean math. So you're dividing up a certain number of things into the most equal parts that they can be. So right now I have the pattern length set to 16 steps. So it's the full width of this. You can set it anywhere from 1 to 64 on the Oxy. I tend to like to use 16 and less, so that I have everything and it doesn't change screens on me. I kind of prefer to see everything here in front of me. So if I've got it on 16 steps, I can start to add in pulses to that, and it will put them equally spread out. So if I add 1, there will be 1 pulse every 16 steps, right? If I add 2, there will be 2 pulses in 16, which means they'll be every 8 steps. It divides them evenly. Where it starts to get interesting is if you start to add an odd number of steps to an even length pattern, or an even number of steps to an odd length pattern, then you get some cool stuff. And I'll put in a kick so you can kind of hear. So if I make this 3 in 16, you can't quite divide 16 by 3, so it'll make it as evenly spaced as it can, but not quite. But if I go to 4, they'll be evenly spaced out again. And they're right on the kick, right? Because that's evenly spaced out. 16 divided by 4 means every 4 steps you've got a note. Then if I add 5, you start to get some cool off rhythms. 6 is a little more even. 7 is a little odder again. And then 8 will be every 2 beats. Right, so it's dividing them as evenly as it can. Then you get to 9. And that's as evenly as it can divide 9 steps up over 16. That's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16 is 1 every single step. Now, if I take that back down to, let's say 3, actually let's do 5. But if I change the length from 16 to a shorter, even length, it will give me a rhythm that won't necessarily repeat every 4 bars. So it makes the pattern actually be much longer seeming than it actually is, even though it's only 16 steps. So if I reduce it from 16 down to 12, but with 5 pulses, and if you start to add something in like an offbeat hat, you get these even funkier rhythms with this. So for example, so this gives me a way to add in random notes and patterns without necessarily having to put them in, although I can. If I want to take out a note, I can just take it out, or if I can add it back in. And you'll notice that these are all right now on that root note of the key, which is, the key is, again, Phrygian E, and that's an E3. So that's gonna start off always on that E3, because that's the key and the root note that I have. But another cool function of this is if I go into the random generator, it allows you to randomly generate notes and patterns, or notes and patterns together, so you can do them separately. So what I like to do with this is if you turn the density knob all the way down, it becomes pitch, and then you have a range and a randomness. So what I can do now is just by pressing this button, I can generate random pitch in the key of Phrygian E for across all 16 steps, but it will only play where there's a gate, where there's a note in like this. So that allows me kind of infinite patterns. So if I press this once, I'll get. And if I press it again, and if I press it again, I can change the range, make it a bit longer. But you notice they'll stay in that Phrygian E key. So it's cool. And now if I change out the number of steps again, I'll have notes across all those steps and it'll create melodies. And then again, I can go into generate random pitch again. And it sounds cool and all by itself, but then if you add in a kick and a hat, and again, if I want to go in and just change up the number of steps, instead of being 12, let's make it 7, I don't know, but with 3 steps. And now let's make it 9 steps. So it ends up being a pretty cool way to create rhythms and create melodies or bass lines or whatever, keeping them in key, but letting the machine do some of the work, so you can ask it questions like, generate this for me, and it'll generate a certain pattern within some parameters, but it's always kind of, there's a certain amount of randomness to it and a certain amount of control that you have as well. So it's, it's pretty interesting. There's one other thing too that I didn't show you, which is if I was to go in and take out all of those notes on that bass line, using that random generator, if I don't just generate pitch, I can set the density, so anywhere from 0 to 100%, and it'll say, okay, across that pattern that's an 8-step pattern, sorry, it's 9 right now, what percentage of those notes? So let's say we put it on, I don't know, 40%, and then I press this, it will generate random note and pitch. And if I press it again, or again, if I like the 1, 2 back, I can go back 1 and back 2. Something that I love about this is that there's an undo and redo. And so when you're generating random patterns, if you generate a new one and you don't like it, you can undo and go back to the last one that you had. So it was, it's pretty cool that way. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why I'm using the Oxy so much, is because it is, it's able to do certain things that other sequencers that I have couldn't do, namely the quantizing to key. Now, I still use the sequencer in the analog rhythm to sequence the analog rhythm because I like to have the ability to parameter lock different things about the sounds within that sequence. And you can't do that with the Oxy unless you do set up CV, and then you have to know exactly how you're going to play and know exactly what you're looking for before you perform, and that's just not the way that I perform. So let's see a little bit in here. USB data cable with on-off switch that might work in resetting the controller. Yeah, maybe. I just do it the old school way, unplug, replug, the old school reset, right? In case this wasn't asked before, do you sidechain your kick? Yeah, I mean, that's another reason why I really love this setup right now of using Ableton, because since I have everything going out from the analog rhythm via Overbridge, I can have everything broken out by channel. And so I can actually put my kick and any rumbles that I have. So like I generally have a kick here, and then these two are different types of rumbles. So if I go, so I can get that type, and the other one's a bit higher. That one's more like a tom. That's more like a rumble. So I have those grouped together into a group in Ableton, and I can use that to sidechain anything else that I want to. So yeah, it's great because if I've got a long sound, like for example, coming out of the Bastille Pizza, which is this unit up here, it has two different outputs. One is kind of the main output that's the sequence that you're putting into it, which is, that's the sequence, but it also has a pulse wave output that just kind of comes out as just a pulse wave. So it still follows the notes, but there's no envelope on it. So you're not really getting anything. So within Ableton, I have that pulse wave, sidechained to the kick, which is interesting because even if I have my kick down, so like if I have my kick like that, but if I bring the volume down all the way, but I bring that pulse wave up with the kick playing, you'll be able to hear the sidechain on the pulse wave. So you can hear the pulsing from that. That's the sidechain from that kick. And then when I bring up the kick, it's more like this. So anything that I have down in that low end, so that's usually the Bastille Pizza and the Erica Synths bass line are normally my basses. And so both of those I have sidechained to the kick. So that sound is also sidechained to the kick. So it allows me to sidechain the things that need a sidechain, but also doesn't have to do, I don't have to have a sidechain on everything, which is great. Let's see. Just set up an Ableton master chain. Yeah, so it's not really on the master. The sidechain is by instrument because there's certain instruments that I don't want sidechained, and there's other ones that I do. Genuinely, anything that's going to be long sound or low end that may kind of conflict frequency-wise with the kicks and the rumbles, those ones I'm sidechaining. Don't use mod lanes and LFOs in the Oxy. I don't usually, no, because I tend to use modulation and LFOs and stuff within the modular case rather than sending them out from the Oxy. I've got plenty to use in here. I've got two of the Pamela's Pro workouts in here, or actually a Pam's Pro and a Pam's New workout. And then I've got 4 LFOs here. I've got the ability to use CV out from the assimilator to use as LFOs. So plenty of LFOs here in the modular. So I just don't mess with it in the Oxy. It can do it, and that's a fantastic function of it. And it's a great way to save space in your case if you want to. That you can, you can use it that way. Let's see. Considering Collider iPad app for rhythm to circumvent wanting the Oxy. Yeah, it's it's hard. The thing that I think that kind of, besides a bunch of the stuff that I just showed before with the Oxy, that really separates it and really makes it kind of what it is its connectability. So you have 8 CV and 8 gate outputs, but they also have this module, which you can't see because it's underneath all these wires right here, but it's called the Oxy pipe, and I'm connected using just an HDMI cable to the Oxy, to the pipe, and then I've got my 8 CV and 8 gate here that can be patched out from that, rather than having to have the cables all come up and over to get into the modular case. It also has 3 different MIDI lane outs. So you can have 1 through 16A, 1 through 16B, and 1 through 16C, all being sequenced out from the Oxy. So I've got 1 MIDI set that's going to the choral. When I had my other setup, I had a whole other track of MIDI that was going to the Syntact. And and I've got another. Oh, actually, don't in this. No, so that's all I'm using right now. But you have the ability to sequence a whole bunch of different stuff because it's got 4 sequencers in it, and each one can be up to 8 tracks. You've got the potential for 32 tracks to sequence out of this that can either go out CV gate or MIDI, and you've got 3 times 16 tracks, 48 tracks of MIDI that you can send out as well. So those can be also LFOs and mod lanes and things like someone mentioned here before. Let's see here. I've been messing with Euclidean patterns on the Torso. Yeah, also a super, super cool sequencer. The Torso is fantastic for doing a lot of the same stuff that I'm doing here, as far as generating things, but keeping within certain parameters, it's really awesome. I love it. For me, the reason why I went with the Oxy instead of the Torso is just I like how this plays a bit better, and this has a lot more outputs. So I can sequence a lot of different things at once. Let's see here. Just ordered the Oxy off the back of watching your discussions with EasyBot. Hey Matt, I think you and I, if you're still in the chat, I think we're responsible for a whole lot of commerce that goes on because people watch our things and they want to buy stuff afterwards. Interestingly enough, when I'm doing these videos, we talk about this a lot. Anything that I'm putting out here, this is all gear that I bought myself. So it's, with the exception of I did get the Oxy One, but I already had one. I got the black version of it from Manuel from Oxy as a thank you for doing some stuff with him in Berlin at Super Booth last year. But for the most part, every single thing that I have here, I buy. And so if I'm doing a video about something on this channel, or if I'm talking about a certain piece of gear, it's not that I'm doing it as for that company. I'm doing it because it's gear that I have, that I own, and if I own it and I haven't bought it and used it and resold it, it means that I like it. So that's yeah. Let's see here. Sound very bad sometimes, your voice. Yeah, it's this. I have this little mic right here, and it's kind of like sounding weird. Maybe if I put it on the outside, it'll sound better. I just didn't want to have this little fluffy thing hanging on my neck. How's that? Maybe that's a little better. Not as muffled inside my shirt. Let's see here. What interface are you using for Ableton? Like, if you decided which channels is Sidechaining, and how come you have so much control? How many channels of input do you have in your interface? So if you look, let me show the overhead view here. So this module, let me move this out of the way. This module right here, the last one that's in this corner, it's kind of hard to see because it's underneath a whole bunch of cables and wires, but this is the Expert Sleepers ES9, and this has 16 inputs and 16 outputs, and it is an audio interface. So I have everything from within the case all patched to their channels in here. Then this USB-C cable is going out to the computer, and then it shows up in Ableton as the audio interface. And then once the audio gets processed through the mixer in Ableton, it then goes back out via the USB-C cable, the same one, into this
the ES9, which is an audio interface, and then it has two outputs, which are these two cables right here. There's two 1/4-inch outputs, and those go out to the front of house if you're performing, or in this case, it's going over to my mixer so that you can hear everything that's going on this. So that's how I have so much control, because in Ableton, on each channel, you have the option, if you set up an audio channel, you have the option of what channel's coming in from your audio interface, just in a drop-down. So I just select ES9 as the interface, and then on that drop-down, I have channels 1 through 16. And so I can assign, if I know that my, the Bastel Pizza is in channel 1, when I open up in Ableton, I create an audio channel, and then I have the input from channel 1 coming into that, and then I just label it within there, and then we go for it. So yeah, that's how it's working. What else? Any other questions anyone has? Anything about the setup or the sounds or anything like that, or anything else? There's a lot of interesting gear stuff that's come out lately. I have to admit, I broke down and got one of the anniversary edition Digitacs, just because I couldn't help myself. Just figured for a souvenir, I wanted to have one. So I'm going to sell my regular Digitac, so I've got that one. So it's not like I just bought another one. Not like I need to have a whole pile of Digitacs, but yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. I think those look very cool. I did see a funny comment the other day about that, and any of you fellow Electron people out there, they were saying that on the promo for those anniversary editions, because it showed like the mono machine and the machine drum and stuff like that, they were hoping for an updated version of those, which I totally get. I'm totally on board with that. But at the same time, they said it wouldn't. They said they understood that that a lot of the hardware that made those isn't available anymore. The software's changed and all that stuff. But they just wanted an updated version of something that could do like drum synthesis, like the machine drum. And what's interesting is that's kind of what the Syntakt is, if you look at it. That was kind of the modern version of a whole bunch of those older machines to be able to do drum synthesis and be able to have digital and analog, as well as MIDI sequencing and all of that stuff. So it was kind of like the modern version of those. But yeah, I've been hovering over order. Yeah, I know. I saw the thing that Bo Beats posted too, where he posted on I don't know, Instagram or something, and he was saying, please send me messages and tell me why I shouldn't order these, because I need more willpower, because I don't have willpower to do it. And then eventually by the end of the day, he said he had not gotten it. So I guess he found some willpower, which I did not find. Couldn't help myself. Too cool to have something new like that. Let's see what else. We can go back into a little bit more about the setup and jam a little bit more as well, and see if you guys have any other questions after that. So again, something that I love to do when I play is just to start from zero. So when I go into a show, actually I'll just clear this out, it's a lot easier that way. When I go into a show, this is how I start, right? So everything cleared out. It's all just kind of a plain blank sequencer. And the only thing that I do pre-sequence and pre-prepare is kind of like my basic drums, like the core. And within the analog rhythm, they're always kind of in the same spot. So track 1 for me is always a kick, right? In different kits, it will be different kicks, but it's always a kick. 5 and 6 are always rumbles for me. So different types of rumbles. 2 is always a clap or a snare. And I kind of set these up as the basics. And then I've got a closed hat on 9, a 16th closed hat, and then I've got open hats on 10 and 11. Just different types of them. And then usually on 12, I'll have something that's also 16th, but that's not a hat, so that I can kind of keep that same energy going. So like in this case, it's a percussive thing that's kind of panning around a little bit, which is pretty cool. But then I've got 7/8 and 3/4, which are different all the time. So what I like to do with the analog rhythm, one of the reasons why I love it is because every single track has the ability to have a drum or percussion sequencer, but it's also got the ability to have a sample as well at the same time. So, and you can mix them together in varying degrees. So for example, if I go to my open hat here, this is 100% synthesis. This is a 100% synthesized hat sound. So like I can go ahead and change the decay if I want to, or I can change, filtering, I can change the attack, I can soften up the attack, I can do whatever I want to make that sound. But I also have a sample underneath that, which is at 0 right now, but it's also an open hat, but it's a much fatter open hat. So if I want to add in some energy at a certain part, I can start to bring that in. So listen to the difference. And it stays on that same pattern. So for example, if we were to go, you can see it's a really simple pattern, but let's say I added in. And if I want, I can go to the synth and take the synth out completely and just use the sample. So that gives me the opportunity to kind of have an infinite number of hats. I've also got the same thing on my closed hats. So if I'm here, that's all synthesis. And then if I start to bring in this is the sample. And so I can use those in varying degrees to create a whole bunch of different hats within that same thing. So one of the reasons why I love the analog rhythm. So back to the explanation of the pads. So 7/8 and 3/4 are always they're always different kind of random percussive / tonal percussive things. So for example, if we go to track 3, I think on this it was kind of like what was it? It was a sample of like, yeah, I think it was, oh no, actually this was synthesized. So anyway, so I can just let you know this. And this was, again, it's a 12-step pattern that has a whole bunch of probability built into it. So if you look, certain things like this one has a 19%, this has a 13%, this has a 25%, this has a 50%, 50%, 25%, 50, and 100. So what that gives is kind of an endless pattern for this percussive sound. So I can keep it at only 12 steps. So I have a lot of control because I can see it and see everything that's here. But if you listen to it in the context of, a kick and a hat, because you have all of those kind of semi-random probabilities that are included in there, it gives you the chance to have something that's forever evolving and constantly changing while you're playing. So that's an example of one of the things that's there. This was just 3 notes that I had sequenced in because I thought it was kind of cool when I was messing around a little while ago. But again, in context. And then being able to change things up because within the analog rhythm, so this is a sample that I'm using, but if I wanted to bring in a percussive thing, I can change it. for example, add bit reduction. I can change the tuning. Fine tune. Change the start and end. So again, you get a ton of control over what's going on, which is why I'm using the analog rhythm rather than just using kind of a regular, normal kind of drum hits, because I love to be able to go in there and mess with things. There's also something that's great about this too, because you have internal effects within the analog rhythm. So for example, if I'm using my kick and hat and I go to that hi-hat and I want to do something that's kind of like a All right. Sorry again. Took off for a while. Anyway, gives you an idea so you can see, again, that was all starting from blank sequencers, no presets in any of the sound modules up here. Very limited kind of foundational drum stuff in the analog rhythm, but with the ability to modify it a lot. So that gives me a lot the ability to be able to kind of jump in there and change stuff and do stuff and all that stuff. So anyway, that's kind of how I play. So let's take a look back in the chat here, see if there's any questions. How do you put your kits together on the rhythm? So kind of basically what I was saying before. So really I have a kind of a convention that I use where one's always a kick. We've always got rumbles on 5 and 6, cymbals across the top, clapper snare on 2, and then 3, 4, 7, 8 are all random. Those can be whatever, but they're all percussive elements. So I'm just using this for drums and percussion, really. And yeah, so I build my kits that way. I tend to try and keep my kick and my hats, actually my kick and my cymbals in general, try to keep them all the same from kit to kit, because I like that continuity through a set, even though I have the ability to change them up a ton. So if I feel like something's getting too monotonous, I can actually modify the sound enough so that it sounds like a different sound, rather than having to go through and prepare a ton of like different sounds and different kits for different things. So I like to keep those foundational elements the same, and then everything else is kind of up for grabs. So everything else I can change up. I change up the rumbles, and I change up the clap snare, and I change up those percussive 4 that I have in there as well. Let's see here. I sample on my aux input, but voices on my RC505 looper. Is that okay? Is that okay? First of all, I am not super familiar with how you're doing that, but the last part of that question, is that okay? Everything's okay. There's no rules. Do things the way you want to do them. The only rule, depending on the kind of music you're making, but really the only rule for me in techno music is if it sounds good, it is good. And so after that, do what you want, make things up, modify stuff, mess around, kind of come up with all kinds of cool, new and unusual things to do. Great stuff, thanks. That drone, yeah, that's that pulse that comes from the Bastel. It's pretty crazy. I love it, and it's something that I kind of randomly tried out. I had done it with a couple of other modules before, but none of them sounded this good. And I love this kind of that kind of droning pulse that's back in the background there. So anyway, yeah. Let's see here. Electrons sound very grand delay. Not sure what you mean there, but yeah. Go ahead and ask the question farther down and I'll see what you mean. Have you given the Zen delay a try? I have. I love it. I actually messed around with it, but I haven't gotten one. But it's if you guys go on Perfect Circuit, you know how they have the wish list. The Zen delay is in my wish list. I think it's a great piece of kit. It's hard because I'm trying to scale back what I'm using rather than add more pieces of gear. And so having something that's a specialized piece of gear, that Zen delay I know it does a lot of things besides delay. It's got the filter, it's got, kind of an overdrive and all that stuff. It's great, but I like to have a bit more control, and I would need that. I would want a Zen delay on every voice. I think it's the problem. So yeah, but I love it. It sounds amazing. Let's see here. Going in. Yes. Glad you guys like that. Side chains means joint up to things. Again, not exactly sure what you mean. Sidechain is basically, it's for if you're not familiar with it, sidechain compressor is, it means that rather than the compressor being triggered by something that's by audio that's in that compression lane, it's triggered by something else. So generally you would do it with a kick drum so that it every time the kick hits, the compressor in effect turns down the volume of whatever channel you've got it on for the length of the kick. So if you've got something that's in the same sonic range as the kick, so let's say a sub bass, and you don't want them to both hit at the same time and kind of overload and clip your system, you can get a lot more power and make your kick sound a lot more clear by sidechaining the bass to the kick. So every time the kick hits, it ducks the bass just a little bit in order to give the kick space to hit, and then the bass kind of rings out around it, if that makes sense. So let's see here. Thank you, Psytrance. Oh, cool, nice. Yeah, I bet I could speed this up and make it a bit more psytrancey. Granular. So the electrons sound very granular. Yeah, I mean, it's each one of the engines within the analog rhythm is they're kind of set up as different things. So they've got, you know, their analog drum engines, their analog drum synthesis engines, but there's different types of them. So some of them are two different sound waves doing frequency modulation, so analog FM, which is very cool, and then you can mess around with that. And then, you know, you've got bit reduction that can also give it that kind of granular sound, that kind of lo-fi-ish sound, but it's actually not a granular synth, but there are some things that do sound a bit that way, I get it. Let's see, Nanopack. Hey, Eric, awesome session. Thank you very much. Looking to play my 1 hour set in more clubs. Any tips on getting more gigs as a live act? Man, it's hard because it's way easier to get gigs as a DJ because that's what everybody wants to see. I think that there are so many live acts out there that are of varying levels of proficiency that I think a lot of promoters are hesitant to book live acts because they don't want it to, you know, we've all heard the people playing live or playing modular where it sounds like they're, you know, learning how to use a synthesizer when they're out there, and it's kind of like bleeps and bloops and stuff like that. And the promoters that are promoting in a club are looking to create a vibe and have a certain energy. A lot of times it's because the crowd in that club is looking to hear particular tracks that they know and things like that. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. But, you know, generally the best way is to get involved with your local kind of live group and put together shows yourself, and, you know, work with promoters to do a second room or an off night and get you guys all gathered together so that it's an all hardware night. It's generally a good way to do it. But other than that, the best way is to get people out there, to get out there so that people can hear your sound, because if they do, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable booking you, and they're not going to think that it's just going to be some, you know, ambient something that kills the atmosphere in their nightclub when they're looking for a dance party. So yeah, I would definitely get the sound out there as much as you can. Let's see, Electribe 2 sidechain. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that can do sidechain, but it really depends on how you want to use it, because you're sidechaining a whole bunch of different things to, for example, a kick drum. So if you have your kick drum separate from your other voices, or if you're you know, you have to have a way to send out the trigger of the kick drum to trigger things to sidechain. So, like, for example, the Percons, which I've sitting right over there, has a trigger output from individual tracks. So if you've got one of those tracks as a kick, you can send that trigger output anywhere that has a sidechain compressor, and you can use that to trigger the sidechain compressor. So it's but it gets a bit more complicated than that, because just sidechaining doesn't do anything. If you sidechain your master, everything's gonna duck like that, and it's gonna sound awful. it'll even duck on the kick. So you want to make sure that you're using it in a wise way. So for example, the Ghost, the Endorphins Ghost module that I have, because it has those really long reverb tails and training on delays, it has a sidechain input. So you can take a signal from something and enter that in to this to sidechain those long washes, so that they don't just end up as a kind of a muddy mix of everything. It gives you a much cleaner sound. So, yeah. What else? Any other questions that you guys have, or anything else? We got about 15 more minutes. I was going to try and keep this to 2 hours. So, anything else you guys have questions on as far as gear or setups or how I'm doing stuff or other gear that's out there? Did you guys see the new Korg Chaos Pad thing? It seems to be everybody's favorite topic right now. How are you feeling about moving to Ableton as your mixer now that you've done it for a bit, not missing the Octatrack? Yeah. Hey, Robin, thanks for jumping on. Yeah, I did. I'm really digging it because I like the control that it gives me. I like the processing power that it gives me. I like the sound that's coming out of it. With the Octatrack, I do like the simplicity of it. I do like having it be an all hardware thing, and not having to count on, a USB hub and a laptop and things like that. But computers have gotten way more trustworthy. So yeah, so it's I'm actually digging it right now. I have to say, I couldn't do it and I wouldn't do it this way if it wasn't for this Expert Sleepers ES9 module. Trying to do this with a traditional mixer going out as an audio interface into the computer, or a traditional multi-channel audio interface going to the computer would just re-complicate things and be too much gear. In that case, I would rather use the Octatrack and just keep it simple and keep the signal chain simple. But because of this ES9 and because of how easy it is to just have these two outputs to the house and have this one cable, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Robin, let's see. Do you control the analog rhythm volumes with an external controller or all in the rhythm itself? So that's a mixed question. Individual channel volumes I control from within the analog rhythm, but I do have a master volume, which is kind of the master channel in Ableton. I could have set it up with a controller with individual channels, because obviously I've got everything going into Ableton through Overbridge from the analog rhythm. So I could have set them up on different channels, but I actually kind of just like using them within the machine itself. I've gotten pretty quick learning my way around it, so it's pretty easy for me to kind of get around and do the things that I want. It's not always 100% perfect, but whoever is, right? I use a Fader Fox MX12 to control the volume and effects in the analog rhythm. Yeah, the Fader Foxes are great. I have, what's the one that doesn't have the sliders on it? Can't remember. I have it over there. And yeah, it's great. But I was trying, with this setup, I was trying to reduce down as much as I could for travel. And so adding that in was kind of like the same as taking out the Octatrack, because it's the exact same size as the Octatrack. So in that case, I might as well have just had it in there. But yeah, it's great. I love having things mapped. I actually have, if you can see, if I tip this up, the Chic N32B. And this is set up so that these 5 channels here are 5 different tracks within the assimilator. So I've got volume faders on the bottom, and then I have a high pass, low pass filter. So it's like a DJ style filter, and then a delay send and a reverb send for each one of those channels that's coming out of the assimilator. I have the same thing in the launch control for kind of my main sounds, so my main voices in the modular, with that high pass, low pass filter mapped to this bottom row, then delay send and a reverb send on each one of the tracks. So it gives me a lot of control over the individual sound of individual tracks that way. Let's see, Vincent, started Modular, God help me. Yeah, it's, I've only been in Modular now for about a year and a half, and it's Yeah, it definitely can. It's definitely a rabbit hole. No questions at this time. Starting small and very slowly. Don't worry, it will get big very quickly and accelerate. Plot twist, yesterday I picked up a Korg 2600M in the reverb blowout for, oh yeah, that's cool. I saw that on there. Actually, didn't you post on social media the link to their blowout sale? That was amazing. I almost got one of those too. Had I not just got the anniversary edition Electron box, I probably would have jumped on that as well. Let's see, Squelch. I'm considering doing the opposite. I've been using a laptop live for a bit. I had a laptop failure on stage and that has scarred me. Ever had the OT failing on you live? I have never had the Octatrack fail me live, and I've never had a laptop fail me live. So I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I know that there have been issues for people in both. So I just think that that's kind of the, that it just comes back to whatever you feel comfortable with. There's a risk of failure no matter what you do. So yeah, it's, I don't know. I think that computers have gotten much more trustworthy, and I think it kind of depends on what you're running on it. When I'm doing this, I try to put as little as possible on the laptop at that time. So I'm just running Ableton, and I only use stock Ableton plugins. So I'm not using any kind of high CPU plugins because I don't want to have things lock up on stage. Let's see, Robin. Yeah, I'm also trying to scale down my setup. Zone 96. Yeah, Zone 96 is a big chunk. So if you can get that there when you arrive, that's great. But yeah, I think it comes back, Robin, to the exact same thing. The mixer is, there's this gaping hole in the live performance world for very portable mixer with built-in customizable effects. And if somebody would build that, I think a lot of us would buy it, because I was using the WMD performance mixer in my modular case, and I basically have this set up so that if I switch back to using the Octatrack, I take out the ES9, I take out the bitbox and just use the 1010 black box as an external. I move the Ghost up, it's the same size as the S9, and then this is the exact fit for the WMD performance mixer. So then I can have that go out into the Octatrack and do that whole thing. So I can do it pretty easily with a switch from this setup. But for right now, I'm just trying out the whole laptop mixing thing. So let's see. Yeah, sure. Had a laptop fail on you 15 years ago. Since then, super careful with how I set it up for playing live. Yeah, it's all about that. Like, just make sure, have the minimum running, have the least possible running. It's weird because right now I have YouTube running on that same laptop so that I can see the chat here, and it's very unusual for me to do that. So I was a little bit sketched out, but it's the only thing that's running is just YouTube and the Ableton suite. And even now, like with Ableton, with what I have running on there, I'm running at like 12% CPU. So it's not like it's gonna freak out and seize up on me right now. Let's see here. Yeah, only Ableton stock plugins. That's the easiest way to reduce down. And the stock plugins are so good. I mean, if you get Max for Live plugins, you can kind of do anything you want to do. Use the DB4. Yeah, the DB4 is awesome. And I don't know why they stopped making it, because having those loopers in there, I loved watching the videos that Dave Mack did, where he was using I think he had 2 Digitacs and a DB4. And it was really cool how he was able to use the effects and the live looping and all that stuff. It was very cool. I wish they were still making that one, because it's a bit smaller. It's not quite the size of one of the, Zone 96s, or definitely smaller than like a V10. But yeah, mixers I think that's really, there's a big gaping hole for mixers. So all you manufacturers out there, if you're listening, make a mixer and we will buy it. I was telling the Electron guys, if they made a mixer that was the form factor of the Octatrack and had 8 ins, so you could put 8 different sets of gear into it, and then you add those same customizable effects that the Octatrack has. And then you had kind of a scaled down version of the analog heat as kind of before you went onto the output, so that you had some, so you could add some saturation and stuff like that. That would sell like bananas. But yeah, anyway. Let's see here. Still have the DB4. Yeah. Too difficult for normal DJs to use. I can see that. Yeah, I could see them not like, they're not going to be big on using the loopers, and you know, live acts would use the loopers, but then there's a lot less of us than there are them, and I'm sure it was made as a DJ mixer. But yeah, I think if people are looping, they're looping in their controller or in their CJ or whatever. But yeah. Really surprised they haven't expanded on the Octatrack idea. Yeah, the problem is that the Octatrack is a totally different firmware. It's a totally different software, a totally different hardware than all of the stuff that they're doing now. A lot of the things aren't available, and the person who wrote the software for that and basically designed everything no longer works for Electron and hasn't for years. And so the idea of like an Octatrack Mark III, it's just they'll never build something that expands on that idea. They're going to have to do something new. They're going to have to do a new high-end flagship, you know, sampler, sequencer, mixer, effects, customizable looper, all that stuff. But it's going to have to be something from scratch. I would be surprised if they weren't already working on that, because that's probably the most asked question in the Electron circles, is when are they going to make an Octatrack Mark III? And I think they would be the first to tell you that the answer for that is never. They will never make an Octatrack Mark III, but they will make something that will take its place eventually. But it's crazy to me that that machine has been around for, what is it, like 12 or 13 years now, and it still sells like crazy. And if you look at, you know, the vast majority of live acts, you'll see one in their setup somewhere. I played a show last year with Lady Starlight and Tunnel and Travarsi and Alex 106. And it was funny because we set up all the way down this table, and we had everybody's gear set up down the table. And in every setup, there was two pieces of gear that were in every single setup. There was a 1010 black box, and there was an Octatrack in everyone's setup. And so the fact that there's an Octatrack there, and it's a 13-year-old piece of kit, and everyone's still using it, says a lot for what that piece of equipment is and what it can do and why it's kind of unique and its own thing. Yeah, Electron could totally make that. I mean, they could make that mixer if they wanted to go that route. I think they should. I've told them that. I told their director of marketing and the CEO of the company at Superbooth. Not that they're going to do it because I said, but I did tell them. Let's see, working my way towards doing live gigs with my Modular and Electron gear, anything that's going to throw me for a loop when doing it for the first time. Yeah, there's a lot of things that'll throw you for a loop, and I couldn't even begin to tell you what they all are. The best advice I think I could give you for playing it is that make sure you know your gear really, really well, so that not if, but when things start to go weird, you can get things back on track, and you haven't just kind of done a preset thing where if it starts to veer off, there's nothing you can do about it. I would definitely do that. And I would say just be ready for it to go crazy. Be ready for it to go off the rails, and embrace the chaos and go for it, because it's, there's no way you're going to be able to set everything up so that it happens the same and it's perfect every single time. So I would definitely work on getting to know your gear. Won't really know how muddy or shrill my sound is until I'm hooked up to PA and need EQ at the venue. Yeah, you can get a pretty good idea for your levels. Just listen to your stuff on a lot of different types of speakers, and just be ready when you get to the venue to make some small adjustments, for sure. Let's see, make sure you have for you, good balance between overview and room for improvisation. Yeah, it's, I would say be comfortable enough with your gear that you can improvise if you need to, but have enough kind of, at least at the start, enough kind of safety net things that you can go back to. Even, you know, when I go to play a gig, even though my stuff is improvised, I still have certain safety nets, meaning that my drums I know exactly where they are all the time. So if something starts to go weird with the modular or something gets, you know, disconnected, or it's, you know, all of a sudden the clock gets off and I have to start it and reset it, or something else like that, like if that starts to happen, I can always go back to a kick and hat. You know, I can always go back to that kind of basis of sound, you know? That's, I don't know, I guess that's where it's, you know, that's kind of my level of comfort, is to be able to go back to this. Right? And I can do quite a lot with this for quite a while, and I can start to bring things in like this. And I can use effects. And that's all just the analog rhythm, just drum machine. So that gives me the chance to, like, oh crap, if I had to stop everything and start it over again, if I had to reset the clock, if I had to do whatever, I can still keep that going. So that's kind of my version of a safety net. I also have a few things in the bitbox. So again, if I'm doing, you know, that kind of groove like that, I've got a few things that I can just throw in here that I almost never use, but they're there kind of as a safety net. So I've got like an acid line here. So if I wanted to. You know, I can use stuff like that. I've got another one. And so having a few things like that kind of in the background, are great, because that way, if something goes weird with your sequencer or something goes weird with something else, you've got a couple things that you could throw in to just kind of keep the thing going while you mess with other stuff. But the key is know your gear well enough so that when something goes wrong, you don't panic. So you say, okay, I'm just gonna keep this bit going that's working. I know that I can switch this clock off and on to reset it. Or like if I need to reset the clock in my bitbox, I know that I can unplug it and hold it out for a couple of seconds. And when I plug it back in, it resets to 0, right? So like there's certain things that I know that I can do without making everything stop and have there be like dead space. So yeah. Car test. Car test, exactly. Bring your whole live setup into your car and car test everything in there. That would be awesome. Going into a band space or something like that to test the mix. Yeah, and having different types of speakers. You know, like here I have 3 different sets of speakers in the studio, and one of them is a set of kind of EV regular speakers that you would play a gig with, that would, you know, you play small venue PA sound. And I have those in here so that I can get a bit of a sense of what it sounds like to have more low end. Because my other speakers for production are very flat. So there's, so sometimes I find that I will, in order to get more low end, I really beef it up. And then when I put it through something that's got a good sub response, all of a sudden it just overloads the low end. So I just need to be careful about that. And that's why I have different levels of stuff. Don't want to spam. You're not spamming, Robin. I love having you on here. Robin, if you guys don't know, is a phenomenal live performer. Check out his stuff online. Check out the stuff that he does. If you guys watch the store event, the store has a second room. They have their main room, obviously, which is what the event that tons of us have been watching. But there's a second room, and Robin has been playing that the last few years, and phenomenal. You can find his live sets online for that. Plus, he plays all over Europe and is an absolutely fantastic live performer. So if you get a chance to see him play, for sure do that. If you look at some of the Pink Noise live sets, yes, those are the live sets from that second room, actually. Everyone uses different equipment and has their own interesting workflow. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like if you look at what Nadia is playing with, her set, her gear is totally unique to what she's doing. What I love about what Nadia does is you can watch 5 gigs of hers in a row, and she's got 5 different setups. Like every time she goes to play, she's like, oh, I think I'm gonna bring this and this and this and this. And it still sounds freaking awesome. So yeah, I love that. I think it's great. And as you just mentioned, know your gear. That's the key. If you know lots of gear, you can select between lots of gear. And if you don't know lots of gear, okay, then it's fine. Play what you have, play what you know. Don't bring out a bunch of gear just to try to look cool and then not know it, have something go wrong and freak out and all of that stuff. So yeah, know your gear. That's definitely the most important. Hey Rolf, what's going on? Cool to have you on there. Rolf is another fantastic live performer from right here in Denver, Colorado. Thanks for the love. Yeah, you fantastic. Like seriously, check out Robin's stuff on YouTube and his Instagram and stuff like that. His stuff is fantastic. Definitely love it. Hopefully get a chance to play together sometime. That would be amazing. We should make that happen at some point. Yeah, Nadia uses different setups, and in the past years, I've always used different setups, catering to the type of gig that I'm playing. Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the things, whenever I do one of these things, or if I post something online and my setup's changed, I get all this feedback like, oh, this has changed. You changed your setup. And it's like, no, I'm playing with different stuff. Like, I've got different gear, and I like playing with it. I have a whole setup over here. Let's see if I can show this. Here, I'll switch this around. I've got over on this side, I have a setup with a bunch of other gear that I like to play on. And I don't have any of my live rig gear there, but that's all stuff that I can play live with. So I love to play that gear, record it, or whatever. And also it's practicing, trying new things. Like I have the quadranted swarm, and I hadn't used it in a while, and I was using it the other day, and I was like, damn, I gotta put this back, bring this out the next time I play. I love the sound of this. So what's cool about the live setup the way that I have it now is that I can interchange stuff. I can bring different things in and out, and it's it makes it a lot more fun and interesting. So yeah, let's see here. Nadia is fire. Yes, she is. She is awesome. And the sweetest, nicest person in the whole world as well. Yes, Robin, let's definitely make it happen. Anytime, man. I'll for sure be back in Europe for Super Booth. So that would be amazing. I inspired you to get the black box. Awesome. It's cool, just like what we were just talking about, to have something like the black box as a backstop, or as those things that when you just need something that loops. I love having it for that. So what I generally use it for, if you look you can't see on here. Let me see if you can see the overhead. Yeah, if you look in here, so I've got, out of those 16, the 4 across the bottom are vocals, the 4 across the middle are atmospheres, so they're like this. Let's see here. Do I need to unplug my controller again? Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna turn off those acid ones. Yeah. So these are just atmospheres. Oops. like this. So just something like that for background stuff. So it's kind of cool because then you can bring in all kinds of other cool stuff like having background atmospheres like that. So I've got stuff like that. So yeah, again, back to atmospheres. Let's see. Exactly what I plan to get it for. Yeah, it's cool for that, because those are those things that you just want to kind of like have it there and not have to worry too much about it. So you can just kind of get it, keep it rolling. Let's see here. Check it out. See you later. Thank you very much for stopping by. I appreciate it. Preferred ways of sound designing atmospheres. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things that you could do. I mean, it's fun to just kind of hit record and start to mess around with stuff and shape stuff. I'm a huge fan for atmospheres of using field recordings. I love getting field recordings of like crowds of people and then pitching them at different levels and layering them on top of each other. So it kind of starts to sound like a choir of talking, if that makes sense. Like whatever. I just think it's a fun way to do it. Let's see, clouds. Yeah, it's great. Clouds, beads. Yes, Rolf, absolutely. Those are awesome for atmospheres. Another thing is the ghost. I mean, as I showed before, you can kind of run anything through the ghost. So if you wanted to run like say, let's like that. So this is just the Oxy by itself. But if I was to run it through the through the ghost. So you get a lot of cool sounds just from going through the ghost. It's a pretty crazy, bonkers machine that can do a lot of super cool stuff, which I absolutely love it. Let's see here. Yep, Clouds is awesome. 1010 Fireball. I haven't played with that, but that looks cool. And the Lemon Drop as well. I want to play with that one too. And I haven't had a chance to, except that I play with it at Super Booth, but I haven't had a chance to play with it like as a actually get to use it. So let's see here. Textures is my thing at the moment. Yes. Yeah, and there's a lot of cool pedals too. I have a Strymon Big Sky, which is really fun to run things through and wash them out and kind of just record as you're doing it and like switch off the main sound that you used and just record the wash and the tail that stays, and then you can loop that for atmospheres as well. Haven't even heard of the Fireball. Yeah, it's one of the little tiny ones from 1010. It's great. Yeah, it's very cool. Yes, once I recorded about 3 hours from a tapas bar. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really cool. Like when you get all those sounds and then you run those through something like a Big Sky, or you run it through, like a, I don't know, what's it called? Oh my God, it's totally went out of my head. I'll think about it. There's some of the cooler, newer pedals that are out there. They can actually do a bunch of, pitch shifting and harmonizing and stuff like that. You can add things that are kind of normal, like the sound of cars on the highway or whatever, and all of a sudden it sounds like something super cool. Let's see. Yeah, the Lemon Drop. So you're preferring the Fireball, the Wavetable one? Yeah, I kind of go back and forth with wavetable stuff, and I haven't really messed with granular at all, and that's kind of why I wanted to do the Lemon Drop and get a chance to mess with that one. But Yeah, they're cool. All those little synths that they came out with are very, very cool. I'm super digging on those for sure. Yeah, the granular synth in Ableton. Yeah, I again don't use that a ton, but I probably should. It's I haven't been recording samples a lot because I'm not using a lot of samples, but it is a good way to kind of, when you want to get in the studio but you're not feeling creative, so you're not going to write something or practice or whatever, you can make samples like that. So it's cool to get in there with some of those synths and load a bunch of effects and create some crazy, stupid, long effects chain, and then start switching things on and off in the effects chain while you record and kind of come up with all kinds of cool, washed out things that you can just chop into a sample and load into the black box or the bit box. And yeah, it does all the cool stuff that way. Let's see, what else? Maris Polymoon, yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, I love that. And what's the one that I'm thinking of? I can't remember now. I don't know. It's another one of those super cool pedals that's out there that everybody's using. But yeah, great way to make that stuff for sure, though. Great way to make it. Cool, cool. Well, any other questions about anything or anything you'd like me to show you guys before we call it a day here? I'm going to try to do some more of these. I do have a bunch of work trips coming up, so I'm not necessarily in the studio very often, but when I am, I'll definitely try to do this because it's fun for me. Gives me an excuse to get in and mess around with stuff. And of course, it's always great to chat with you guys and have the friends on there. It's great to see people like Robin and Rolf and Vincent and all those guys. It's good to see you in the chat and not just at a gig, which is super fun as well. But yeah, speaking of gigs, I have one coming up in Denver in January. I'm going to be going to Edmonton, Canada in February. Not a ton going on in December because I've got a big work trip. So I haven't been able to really set anything up. Let's see here. Oh, how's the Chic 32 M32 working out? It's awesome. So I have it set to, so right now, just to give you a little quick overview of what it's doing, these first 5 columns are 5 tracks from the assimilator. I have a couple of stereo tracks, that's why I'm only using 5 of the 8. So I have 5 tracks from the assimilator with a DJ style high pass, low pass, a delay send, and a reverb send for each track. Then over in this little box on the side, I have it set up to do all of my kind of performance effects. So I have like a riser, a high pass filter, high pass with a reverb, high pass with a delay, just a reverb. And then all of this kind of L shape that goes around it, those are all of the sends from all of the modular voices to the Ghost. And so that way I can send each individual instrument, however I want, to the Ghost to get some of those big washes and kind of cool sounds. And then within the launch control, I still have a delay and a reverb send for each voice, but this is more for that kind of like Ghost craziness that it does, so I can kind of fill out everything like that. So yes. Microcosm, exactly. Yes, that's the pedal that I was thinking of. Yeah, if you're talking about making like washes and cool atmosphere stuff, I would buy the Microcosm just for that because it's so crazy what it does that when you put just like a simple sound into it, the ways that you can twist and manipulate that sound inside are bonkers. So yeah, I love that. It's a great pedal. It's definitely one that I would consider buying for sure. Yeah, the Night Sky is very cool too. I like that one as well. All right, Cool. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. Great to have you here. Thanks for stopping by. Feel free to reach out if there's anything that pops up, any other questions or something, and we're off the chat. Put it in the comments on the video, or shoot over a direct message on Instagram or whatever. I'd love to nerd out and talk stuff and gear and all that kind of stuff. And happy to share anything. So definitely let me know if you've got any questions. I'll be happy to share what I do to the best of my knowledge. There's tons of stuff that I don't know, but I can for sure generally point you in the direction of somebody who does know if I don't know something. So I will be happy to do that as well. But thank you guys very much. It's great to have you here. I really appreciate it, and thanks for all the support with the live shows and with the YouTube channel and all that stuff. We just went over 8,000 subscribers, which is bizarre to me that there's that many people that are interested in this stuff. But if it wasn't for you guys tuning in and passing it on, none of that would happen. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. It's great to have you all on here, and hope to see you in the next one. Thanks very much. See ya. Peace.